Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Meridian and watched the stars move past them like distant fireflies. His ship had been traveling for 3 months now, deeper into space than any human had ever gone before. The mission was simple: find new worlds that humans could live on and look for other life forms that might be out there waiting. Dr. Lisa Carter walked up to him holding a small device that beeped softly. She was the ship's expert on alien life, though she had never actually seen any aliens before. No human had. "Jake, I'm getting some strange readings from that star system ahead of us," she said, pointing at a dim red star that looked like it was dying. Jake looked at the readings on her device. "What kind of strange?" "There's something big orbiting that star. Something that doesn't look natural." Lisa's eyes were bright with excitement. "It might be artificial, Jake. It might be made by someone." The bridge crew stopped what they were doing and looked at them. Engineer Danny Brooks turned away from his control panel. Navigation Officer Kelly Adams stopped checking their course. Security Chief Roy Martinez walked over from his station. They all knew what this could mean. "Are you sure?" Jake asked. "As sure as I can be from this distance." "We need to get closer to know for certain," Jake thought for a moment. This was why they were out here. This was what Earth had sent them to find. "Danny, how long to reach that system?" "About 6 hours. At our current speed, sir. Take us there." The hours passed slowly. Lisa spent most of the time checking and rechecking her instruments. The readings got stronger as they got closer. Whatever was out there, it was huge, and it was definitely not natural. When they finally arrived at the dying red star, they all gathered on the bridge to see what they had found. On the main screen was something that took their breath away. It was a space station, but unlike anything humans had ever built. It was enormous, maybe 10 times bigger than the largest human space station. It had graceful curves and flowing lines that looked almost like art. "My God," whispered Kelly. "Someone built that? Are there any life signs?" Jake asked. Lisa worked at her instruments for several minutes. "Yes, but they're very faint. Whatever's in there, there aren't many of them left." Jake made his decision. "Danny, take us closer. Roy, get a team ready. We're going aboard." As they approached the alien station, Jake noticed that it looked old and worn. Parts of it were dark, as if the power had failed in those sections, but other parts still glowed with a soft light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "There's a docking port on the lower section," Danny reported. "It looks like it might fit our shuttle." "Lisa, you're with me," Jake said. "Roy, bring 3 of your security team. Danny, you stay here and keep the ship ready in case we need to leave quickly." The shuttle trip to the station took only a few minutes, but it felt much longer. As they got closer, they could see that the station was even more beautiful than it had looked from far away. The metal was smooth and seemed to change color as the light from the dying star hit it. The docking was easier than expected. Whatever had built this station, they seemed to understand the basic rules of space travel. The airlock cycled properly and showed that there was breathable air on the other side. Jake was the first to step onto the alien station. The corridor they entered was tall and wide, clearly built for beings larger than humans. The walls glowed with the same soft light they had seen from outside. Everything was clean and well maintained, but there was something about the place that felt empty and sad. They had walked for about 10 minutes when they heard footsteps coming toward them. Jake held up his hand and his team stopped. The footsteps were slow and careful, not threatening. Around the corner came a being that was clearly not human. It was tall, maybe 8 feet, with long, thin arms and legs. Its skin looked almost transparent, and Jake could see what might have been blood vessels underneath. Its head was large with huge eyes that seemed to take up most of its face. When it saw them, it stopped and made a sound that might have been fear. "Hello," Jake said slowly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. The being looked at them for a long moment, then turned and walked away quickly. Jake and his team followed at a distance. The being led them to a large circular room, where several more of its kind were waiting. One of them, older looking than the others, stepped forward. It touched something on its chest and suddenly spoke in perfect English. You are human, it said, and its voice was filled with something that might have been terror. Yes, Jake replied. We come in peace, we want to be friends. The old being looked at the others, then back at Jake. We are Villani. We have been waiting for this day and hoping it would never come. Why? Lisa asked. We won't hurt you. The old Villani made a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. You do not understand. We are the last of our people from 17 worlds. We have been running for 300 of your years. Running from what? Jake asked. The Villani's large eyes seemed to look right through him. From the Devourers. From the monsters that hunt us across the stars. From the ones who take everything and leave nothing behind. Jake felt a chill run down his spine, though he didn't understand why. These Devourers, can you tell us what they look like? The old Villani was quiet for a long time. Then it said, Come, we will show you the records. You will understand why we fear them so much. As they followed the Villani deeper into the station, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The way the alien had looked at them, the fear in its voice when it said they were human, it was as if their arrival was not good news at all, but the beginning of something terrible. The UES Meridian moved slowly through space, surrounded by dozens of Villani ships. Jake had agreed to escort the alien refugees to what they called a safe zone, far from the paths that the Devourers usually took. The Villani ships were strange and beautiful, with the same flowing lines as their space station, but Jake noticed they all had powerful engines built for running fast rather than fighting. Engineer Danny Brooks spent most of his time studying the Villani technology from a distance. He couldn't get close enough to examine it properly, but what he could see amazed and confused him. Their ships are incredible, he told Jake one day as they watched the alien fleet from the bridge. Their power systems are at least 50 years ahead of ours, maybe more. Their hull materials look like they could survive almost anything. Then why are they running? Jake asked. If their technology is so advanced, why don't they fight these Devourers? Danny shook his head. That's what I don't understand. They have the tools to defend themselves, but they choose to run instead. It doesn't make sense. Dr. Lisa Carter had been spending time on the Villani command ship, trying to learn more about their history and their enemy. The Villani were willing to talk about many things, but when the subject turned to the Devourers, they became nervous and spoke in whispers. They call them the Great Hunt, Lisa reported to Jake after one of her visits. The Devourers don't just attack randomly. They hunt in groups, plan their attacks, and seem to enjoy the chase as much as the kill. The Villani say they're intelligent but savage. What do they look like? Jake asked. That's the strange part. I've asked several Villani, and they all give different answers. Some say the Devourers are large, others say they're small. Some say they have claws, others say they use tools. It's like they're describing completely different creatures. Navigation. Officer Kelly Adams had been tracking the Villani's flight path through space. She had mapped out every world they had abandoned over the past 3 centuries. Look at this, she said, showing Jake a star map covered in red dots. Each dot is a world the Villani lived on before the Devourers came. The pattern is strange. Jake studied the map. The abandoned worlds formed a rough line through space, but it wasn't random. It looks like the Devourers are following a specific path. That's what I thought, too. And if you extend this line backward, it points toward a very specific region of space. Kelly highlighted part of the map. It points toward Earth. The thought sent a chill through Jake, but he pushed it aside. Lots of things could explain that pattern. Space was big and coincidences happened. Security Chief Roy Martinez had been talking to the Villani guards and warriors. They were peaceful now, but he could see they had been fighters once. They have weapons, Roy told Jake. Good ones. Their energy rifles are better than anything we have. But when I asked them why they don't use them against the Devourers, they just look scared and change the subject. Maybe the Devourers are just too strong, Jake suggested. I don't think that's it. I think they're afraid of something else. When I mention fighting back, they look at me like I just suggested something horrible. Dr. Carter had finally convinced the Villani to show her their historical records about the Devourers. Elder Jin, the leader of the refugees, led her to a secure room deep inside their command ship. The walls were covered with displays showing images and videos from their past. "These are the only records we have of the Devourers," Jin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We do not like to look at them, but you asked to see." The first images showed Villani worlds as they had been before the Devourers came. Beautiful cities with tall spires, green forests, and clear blue seas. The Villani had built a peaceful civilization that lasted for thousands of years. Then came the images of what happened after. Empty cities with no signs of battle. Abandoned farms and factories. Ships in orbit around dead worlds, waiting for any survivors who might remain. But there were never any survivors? Where are the bodies? Dr. Carter asked. Where are the signs of fighting? There are none, Jin replied. That is what makes the Devourers so terrible. They do not destroy with fire or weapons. They simply come and everything changes. Life becomes impossible for us. But how? What do they do? Jin was quiet for a long moment. They take the best places. They change the air and water to suit themselves. They are so good at living that there is no room left for anyone else. They do not mean to kill us, but we die anyway. Dr. Carter felt something cold settle in her stomach. How long does this process take? Sometimes many years. Sometimes only a few. It depends on how many of them come and how fast they spread. And you never fought back? Jin looked at her with his large, sad eyes. How do you fight something that is not trying to fight you? How do you battle creatures who are simply better at being alive than you are? Back on the Meridian, Danny had made a disturbing discovery. He had been analyzing the energy signatures from the Villani ships and comparing them to the readings from the abandoned worlds Kelly had mapped. The timeline doesn't work, he told Jake. According to the Villani, some of these worlds were abandoned recently, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, but the energy readings suggest the Devourers have technology. That's advancing rapidly. What do you mean? I mean the attacks on the older worlds show one level of technology, but the newer attacks show much more advanced methods. It's like the Devourers are learning and improving as they go. Dr. Carter returned from the Villani ship with more questions. Then answers. They're hiding something, she told Jake. I can feel it. When I ask about what the Devourers actually look like, they get nervous. When I ask why they don't fight back, they change the subject. And the way they describe the hunting patterns? What about them? They sound familiar. Pack hunting, intelligence? Tool use, the ability to adapt to new environments quickly. It reminds me of something, but I can't put my finger on what. Kelly had been working on the star charts again. I've been thinking about that flight path, she said. If the Devourers started from Earth's region of space and worked their way out, they would have reached the first Villani worlds about 300 years ago. That's around the time humans first achieved spaceflight, Danny said quietly. It's probably just a coincidence, Jake said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. Roy had finally gotten one of the younger Villani warriors to talk about the Devourers' fighting methods. He says they don't fight fair, Roy reported. They use ambush tactics, coordinated attacks, and they never give up. Once they decide they want something, they keep coming until they get it. They're smart enough to avoid direct confrontation when they're outnumbered, but they always find a way to win in the end. That could describe a lot of predator species, Jake said. Maybe, but he also said something else. He said the Devourers seem to enjoy the hunt itself. They don't just kill for food or territory. They hunt because they like to hunt. Dr. Carter had been thinking about everything they had learned. That night she couldn't sleep. Something about the Villani's descriptions kept bothering her. She got up and went to her computer, pulling up everything they knew about human history, human expansion patterns, and human behavior. The more she read, the more uncomfortable she became. Humans were pack hunters. Humans used tools and tactics. Humans adapted quickly to new environments. Humans had been expanding into space for about 300 years. And humans, unlike most other species, seemed to hunt and compete not just for survival, but for the challenge itself. She tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept coming back. When she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of empty Villani cities and the sound of human footsteps echoing through abandoned streets. Jake stood in the shuttle bay of the Meridian, checking his equipment one more time. Against the strong warnings of Elder Jin and the other Villani, he had decided to visit one of the abandoned worlds. The planet was called Kepler 442b by human scientists, but the Villani had called it Tira when they lived there. They had fled from it only 30 years ago when the Devourers arrived. "This is a mistake," Jin had told him through the translator. "The Devourers may still be there. They sometimes stay on a world for many years after they have claimed it." But Jake needed to see for himself what these Devourers were capable of. The Villani descriptions didn't match anything in human databases of known aggressive species. He needed evidence, not just stories. Dr. Lisa Carter finished loading her scientific equipment into the shuttle. She was nervous but excited. This would be their first chance to study Devourer technology and tactics up close. Maybe they could learn something that would help protect other species from these monsters. Security Chief Roy Martinez and Dr. Ben Clark, the ship's expert on alien archaeology, completed the away team. Ben had joined the mission specifically to study alien cultures, though he had never expected to be studying the aftermath of what appeared to be genocide. The shuttle landed in what had once been the capital city of Thera. From space, the world looked beautiful and healthy. Green forests covered most of the continents, and the oceans were a deep blue color. There were no signs of the destruction Jake had expected to find. "This is strange," Lisa said as they walked through the empty streets. The Villani made it sound like the Devourers destroyed everything, but this city looks almost perfect. The buildings were intact and undamaged. The Villani had built with the same flowing, artistic style as their spaceships. Gardens grew wild between the structures, but they were still beautiful. There were no blast marks, no rubble, no signs of battle. "Where are all the bodies?" Roy asked. "If there was a war here, where are the casualties?" Ben was examining the buildings more closely. "There's no damage at all. It's like everyone just left one day and never came back." They spent the morning exploring the city. Jake found it increasingly disturbing. The Villani had clearly lived here for a long time. There were homes filled with personal belongings, schools with children's artwork still on the walls, and restaurants with food still in the storage areas. Everything suggested a normal, peaceful life that had been suddenly interrupted. "Look at this," Lisa called from what appeared to be a government building. She had found a room filled with records and documents. "These are evacuation orders. The Villani leadership ordered everyone to leave the planet immediately." "Why?" Jake asked. "It doesn't say. Just that the Devourers had been detected in the system and all citizens had to evacuate within 72 hours. Ben had found something else interesting. In the basement of a large building, he discovered what looked like a historical archive. The walls were covered with images and texts that seemed to tell the story of the Villani civilization on this world. "This is incredible," Ben said as the others joined him. "This goes back thousands of years. The Villani were here for a very long time before they had to leave. But it was the most recent section of the archive that caught their attention. Here, the Villani had recorded everything they knew about the Devourers. There were images that looked like artistic interpretations of their enemy. Since the Villani claimed to have never seen them directly, the creatures in the images were bipedal, roughly humanoid in shape, but the details were vague and contradictory. Some images showed them as large and powerful, others as smaller and more agile. Some had claws, others held tools. The only consistent features were that they moved upright on two legs and seemed to work together in groups. "These descriptions are all over the place," Roy said. "It's like they're describing different species entirely." Lisa was studying the text that accompanied the images. According to this, the Devourers hunt in organized groups. They're highly intelligent and extremely adaptable. They can survive in almost any environment and they learn quickly from each encounter. "What's this part here?" Jake asked, pointing to a section of text that seemed to have been added more recently. Ben translated it slowly. It says the Devourers don't seem to attack out of hunger or territorial needs like normal predators. They hunt because they enjoy it. They like the challenge of the chase. The team spent the rest of the day exploring other parts of the city. They found more archives, more evacuation records, and more evidence that the Villani had left in a hurry. But they found no evidence of the Devourers themselves. It was Dr. Clark who made the first disturbing discovery. In what appeared to be a military facility, he found detailed tactical analyses of Devourer hunting patterns. The Villani military had studied their enemy carefully before giving up and running. "Look at this," Ben said, showing the others a series of diagrams. "These show how the Devourers approach a new world. They don't attack directly. They establish small outposts first, usually in areas that the native species aren't using much." "Then what?" Roy asked. "Then they expand slowly, taking the best locations for themselves. They don't fight the natives directly unless they have to. They just gradually take over all the resources until there's nothing left for anyone else." Lisa felt a chill as she read the report. "It says here that the Devourers are incredibly efficient at using resources. They can get more food, energy, and materials from the same land than the native species can. That would make them nearly impossible to fight," Jake said. "How do you battle someone who can simply outlive you?" But it was Roy who found the most disturbing evidence. In a secure section of the military facility, he discovered what appeared to be surveillance recordings from other worlds that had fallen to the Devourers. The recordings were old and of poor quality, but they showed the same pattern on world after world. The Devourers would arrive in small numbers, establish themselves in remote areas, then gradually expand until they controlled all the best resources. The native species would find themselves pushed into smaller and smaller areas until they had no choice but to leave or die. "This is systematic," Roy said as they watched the recordings. "They've done this dozens of times. They have a method." But the most chilling discovery came when Ben found a hidden section of the archive that contained the Villani's most recent intelligence on the Devourers. The aliens had been trying to track their enemies' movements for centuries, always staying one step ahead of them. "They've been mapping the Devourer expansion for 300 years, Ben said. "Look at this." The map showed a steady progression of conquered worlds, forming a clear path through space. Jake felt his blood turn cold as he realized what he was looking at. "The path starts here," Ben said, pointing to a section of the map. "This is where the Devourers first appeared." Jake knew those star coordinates. Every human spacer would recognize them. "That's the solar system," he said quietly. "That's Earth." The team stood in silence, staring at the map. The evidence was undeniable. The Devourer expansion had started from Earth and moved outward, following the same paths that human exploration had taken. "It has to be a coincidence," Lisa said, but her voice was shaking. Roy was studying the tactical reports more carefully. "These hunting patterns," he said slowly. "The way they work in groups, the way they adapt to new environments, the way they seem to enjoy the challenge." "What about them?" Jake asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. "They sound exactly like human military tactics. Small advanced teams, establishment of forward bases, gradual expansion, efficient resource utilization." Roy looked up at the others. "These are the same strategies humans have been using for thousands of years." Ben had found one more piece of evidence. In the deepest part of the archive was a single image that the Villani had managed to capture from a great distance. It was blurry and hard to make out, but it showed figures moving through what had once been a Villani settlement. The figures were unmistakably humanoid. They moved with purpose and coordination. And even though the image was unclear, there was something about the way they carried themselves that looked disturbingly familiar. "We need to get back to the ship," Jake said. His voice was steady, but inside he felt like his world was falling apart. "We need to talk to the Villani again." As they flew back to the Meridian, each of them was lost in their own thoughts. The evidence was mounting, but none of them wanted to believe what it seemed to be telling them. The Devourers that the Villani feared so much, The monsters that had driven them from 17 worlds, the creatures that hunted for sport and took everything they touched. They weren't aliens at all, they were human. Dr. Lisa Carter sat in her laboratory aboard the Meridian, staring at the data they had collected from the abandoned Villani world. Her hands shook as she typed her report. The evidence was overwhelming, but she kept hoping she would find something that would prove her growing suspicions wrong. She had spent 3 days analyzing everything they had found. The timeline of Devourer attacks matched perfectly with human expansion into space. The first attacks began around 2087, the same year humans had established their first permanent colonies outside the solar system. Every subsequent attack followed the path of human exploration. "Computer, display star chart overlay," she said. The screen showed 2 maps, one marking worlds attacked by Devourers, the other showing human colonial expansion. The patterns were identical. Jake entered the lab looking tired and worried. He had been avoiding this conversation for days, but they both knew it had to happen. "What do your tests show?" "The genetic material we found on Thyra," Lisa said quietly. "I've run it through every database we have." "It's human, Jake. The DNA samples from the Devourer campsites are definitely human." Jake closed his eyes. "Maybe they're just similar. Maybe evolution produced something that looks like us." "I tested hair samples, skin cells, even traces of blood." "It's not similar to human DNA. It is human DNA. The Devourers aren't aliens, Jake. They're us." Communications Officer Amy Torres had been monitoring Villani transmissions without permission. She knew it was against regulations, but something about the aliens' behavior had been bothering her. She finally brought her findings to Jake. "Sir, I've been listening to their private communications," she said nervously. "They have an entire network of monitoring stations tracking our movements. They've been watching human ships for decades." "What do you mean watching us?" "They have observers near every major human trade route. They track our exploration vessels, our colony ships, even our military patrols. They're not just refugees. Sir, they're running an intelligence operation." Jake felt sick. "Are we the ones they're gathering intelligence about?" "Yes, sir, they call it the Early Warning Network. Whenever humans enter a new system, they send alerts to any species in the area to evacuate immediately." Danny Brooks had been analyzing the Villani technology more carefully. What he found made him understand why such an advanced species would choose to run rather than fight. "Their technology is defensive," he reported to Jake. "Everything they build is designed for running and hiding, not fighting. Their ships are fast but lightly armed. Their space stations have incredible sensors for detecting approaching threats, but minimal weapons." "Maybe they're just a peaceful species," Jake suggested. "That's what I thought at first. But then I looked at their historical records. The Villani used to have powerful weapons, strong military forces, and heavily defended worlds. They only became pacifists after the Devourers started hunting them." "You're saying we made them this way?" "I'm saying they gave up fighting because they learned they couldn't win against us. Every time they tried to resist, they lost. Eventually, they stopped trying." Dr. Carter had requested a private meeting with Elder Jin. She needed to hear the truth directly from the Villani leader. They met in a quiet room on the alien command ship, with only a translator device between them. "You know, don't you?" Jin said before Lisa could speak. "You have figured out what the Devourers really are." "We suspect," Lisa replied carefully, "but we need to be certain." Jin was quiet for a long time. "Your species terrifies us," he finally said. "Not because you are evil, but because you are so good at being alive. Wherever you go, you make everything better for yourselves and worse for everyone else. We don't mean to hurt anyone. That makes it worse. When a species attacks you with weapons, you can fight back or negotiate. But how do you fight someone who is simply better at existing than you are?" Jean activated a holographic display that showed the history of human-Villani contact. "We have been watching your species since you first left your homeworld. We hoped you would stay in your own system, but you kept expanding. When did you realize we were the Devourers from your legends?" "About 50 years ago. We had stories of the great hunt that went back centuries, but we thought they were myths. Then, we started finding the abandoned worlds and realized the legends were real. The display showed surveillance footage of human colonies. Lisa watched families building homes, farmers growing crops, and children playing in streets that had once belonged to other species. You don't see what you do, Jin continued. You arrive on a world and immediately start making it more suitable for humans. You change the atmosphere, alter the soil, redirect water sources, and eliminate anything that competes with you for resources. We're terraforming. We're making dead worlds livable. The worlds you terraform are not dead. They are full of life that cannot compete with your modifications. We watched you turn Kepler-186f into a human world. It had been home to 17 different intelligent species. Within 10 years of your arrival, none of them remained. Lisa felt her stomach turn. What happened to them? They died. Not from violence, but from slow starvation, as you took all the best land, all the clean water, all the resources they needed to survive. You didn't murder them. You simply lived more efficiently than they could? Back on the Meridian, Jake called, his senior staff together. It was time to face the truth they had all been avoiding. We are the monsters, he said without preamble. The devourers that the Villani have been running from for 3 centuries are human beings. Roy Martinez shook his head. We've never attacked the Villani. We've never even seen them before this mission. We didn't have to attack them directly. Lisa explained. Human expansion has been pushing them out of their territories for generations. Every world we colonized used to belong to someone else. That's impossible, Danny protested. The colonies are built on uninhabited worlds. Uninhabited by humans, Amy said quietly. But we've been following the Villani flight path. Every system we call uninhabited, they called home until recently. Jake pulled up the star charts they had been studying. Look at this pattern. Human colonies established over the past 300 years. Now look at this. Worlds abandoned by the Villani over the same time period. They're the same worlds. The room was silent as everyone absorbed the implications. How many species? Lisa asked. How many intelligent races have we displaced without even knowing they existed? Jake consulted the Villani data. According to their records, at least 47 different species have gone extinct in human space over the past 3 centuries. Not from war, not from disease, but from being gradually pushed out of their own territories by human expansion. What do we do now? Roy asked. Before Jake could answer, Amy's communication panel started beeping urgently. Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from the Villani fleet. It's not directed at us. It's a general broadcast to all ships in this region of space. What does it say? Amy translated the message. Warning to all vessels. The Great Hunt has been confirmed. Human devourers are present in this system. All intelligent species should evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. Jake looked around the room at his crew. They're warning other species about us. Right now there are probably dozens of alien races receiving emergency broadcasts telling them to run because humans are coming. We're not monsters, Danny said desperately. We're explorers. We're trying to make the galaxy a better place. For humans, Lisa said sadly. We're making it better for humans. But apparently what's good for us is death for everyone else. The communication panel beeped again. This time it was a direct message to the Meridian from Elder Jin. Commander Morrison, the translated voice said. We know you have discovered the truth. We do not blame you personally, but we cannot travel with the Great Hunt any longer. We are leaving for the outer rim, where your species has not yet reached. We suggest you return to human space and warn your people about what they are doing. Should we respond? Amy asked. Jake thought for a moment. Ask them one question. Ask them if there's any way for humans and other species to coexist. Amy sent the message and waited for a reply. When it came, Jin's words were simple and final. Your species does not coexist. Your species expands. The galaxy is large, but it is not infinite. Eventually, you will run out of empty space to fill, and then you will have to choose what kind of monsters you want to be. As Jake watched the Villani fleet jump to faster-than-light speed and disappear into the darkness, he realized their mission had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They had made first contact with an alien species. The problem was, that species had already known about humans for 300 years, and they were absolutely terrified of them. Jake Morrison stood alone on the observation deck of the Meridian, staring out at the empty space where the Villani fleet had been just hours before. The silence felt heavy and wrong. For the first time in his life, he was afraid of his own species. Dr. Lisa Carter found him there 3 hours later. She carried a datapad filled with information that would make everything worse. "I've been analyzing the Villani database they left behind," she said. "Jake, it's bigger than we thought." "Much bigger? How much bigger?" "The Villani aren't the only ones running from us. They're part of something called the Exodus Coalition. It's an alliance of over 200 different intelligent species, all fleeing human expansion." Jake felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders like stones. 200 species? The coalition has been operating for almost 3 centuries. They share information about human movements, coordinate evacuations, and help each other find new homes in the Outer Rim. They have an entire civilization built around staying ahead of us. She showed him images from the database. Dozens of different alien species, all working together for one purpose, avoiding contact with humanity. There were tall, graceful beings like the Villani, short crystalline creatures that looked like living minerals, and things that barely looked alive at all but clearly possessed intelligence. "They call it the Great Flight," Lisa continued. "The largest refugee movement in galactic history. Billions of intelligent beings all running from one species. From us. From us." Communications Officer Amy Torres had been monitoring subspace channels, looking for any sign of the Coalition's communication network. What she found was both amazing and terrifying. "Sir, they have relay stations throughout the galaxy," she reported to Jake. "Thousands of them. They track every human ship movement and broadcast warnings in real time. When a human exploration vessel enters a system, every intelligent species within 50 light-years knows about it within hours. How is that possible? How did we never detect any of this?" "Because they've been watching us for so long, they know exactly how to avoid our sensors. They've studied human technology for generations and built their entire infrastructure around staying invisible to us." Danny Brooks had been working on decrypting more of the Villani technical data. What he discovered made him sick to his stomach. "They have detailed profiles of human colonial patterns," he told Jake. "They know exactly how we expand, how we choose worlds to settle, and how we modify environments to suit our needs. They've turned avoiding us into a science." The profiles were incredibly detailed. The aliens knew that humans preferred worlds with specific atmospheric compositions, certain gravity ranges, and particular climate patterns. They knew how humans would alter a planet's ecosystem and which native species would be unable to adapt. "Look at this," Danny said, showing Jake a simulation. "They can predict with 97% accuracy which worlds humans will colonize next and in what order. They evacuate those worlds years before we even decide to go there." "How long have they been doing this?" "Since 2156, the first documented human colony that displaced an intelligent species. That's when they started the early warning network." Dr. Carter had made an even more disturbing discovery in the medical sections of the Villani database. "Jake, they've been studying human biology for centuries. They know more about us than we know about ourselves?" "What do you mean?" "They've analyzed human DNA from samples collected on abandoned worlds. They've studied our reproductive patterns, our nutritional needs, our disease resistance, even our psychological profiles. They know exactly why we're so successful at displacing other species." The analysis was comprehensive and frightening. Humans were efficient omnivores who could eat almost anything. They reproduced quickly and had short generation cycles, allowing rapid adaptation to new environments. They were highly social but also extremely competitive, driving them to constantly expand their territory. "According to their research, humans are the perfect invasive species, Lisa said. We adapt faster than other species can evolve to compete. With us, we're not just displacing them, we're out-evolving them. Security Chief Roy Martinez had been studying the Coalition's military capabilities. What he found challenged everything he thought he knew about galactic security. They have weapons, he told Jake. Incredible weapons. Energy systems that make our best military technology look like toys from the Stone Age. But they've never used them against us. Why not? Because they've run simulations. According to their analysis, any military conflict with humanity would result in the complete destruction of both species. Humans don't surrender and we don't retreat. If they attacked us, we would fight until every human was dead and we'd take them with us. The Coalition's military studies painted a picture of humanity that Roy found both proud and terrifying. Humans were described as the most persistent and aggressive species the galaxy had ever encountered. They never gave up, never backed down, and never accepted defeat. They're not afraid of our weapons, Roy continued. They're afraid of our psychology. They know that if they start a war with us, we won't stop fighting until the galaxy is empty. Amy had managed to locate one of the Coalition's monitoring stations in a nearby system. The station was hidden inside an asteroid field, completely invisible to human sensors but perfectly positioned to watch the major hyperspace routes. Sir, I'm picking up transmissions from the station, she reported. They're tracking us right. Now they know our position, our course, and our capabilities. Are they transmitting our location to others? Yes, sir. Every ship in this region of space knows exactly where we are and what we're doing. Jake felt like prey being watched by invisible predators? Except in this case, he was beginning to understand that humanity was the predator, and everyone else was the prey. Dr. Carter had discovered the most damning evidence in the Coalition's historical archives. She found detailed records of first contact attempts that had gone horribly wrong. They tried to communicate with us, she told Jake, multiple times over the past 2 centuries. They sent diplomatic missions to human colonies, tried to establish peaceful contact, even offered to share technology. What happened? We killed them, not intentionally but effectively. Every time they tried to make contact, human authorities classified them as potential threats. The diplomatic missions were intercepted by military forces, the ambassadors were detained for study, and the technology offers were seen as possible weapons. The records showed attempt after attempt at peaceful contact, all ending in failure. The aliens would approach human colonies with messages of friendship, only to be met with suspicion and hostility. Eventually, they stopped trying. The last attempt was in 2341, Lisa said. A coalition delegation tried to meet with Earth's government directly. They wanted to negotiate territorial boundaries and establish formal diplomatic relations. What happened to them? They were shot down by orbital defense systems before they could deliver their message. Earth Command classified the incident as a failed alien invasion attempt. Jake realized the horrible irony. While humanity had been dreaming of making first contact with alien species, those species had been desperately trying to avoid any contact with humanity at all. Amy had intercepted another transmission from the monitoring station. This one was different. It was directed at the Meridian specifically. Sir, they're sending us a message. What does it say? Amy translated the complex alien text. It's from someone called the Archive Keeper. They want to meet with us. They say they have something important to show us about humanity's future. It could be a trap, Roy warned. I don't think so, Jake said. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. They've had weapons capable of wiping out our entire species for centuries. Why haven't they? Lisa answered for him. Because they know that destroying humanity wouldn't solve the problem. They know that we're not evil, we're just too successful. And they know that if they kill us, they'll have become the very monsters they're trying to avoid becoming. Jake made his decision. Amy, respond to the Archive Keeper. Tell them we accept their invitation. As the Meridian changed course toward the monitoring station, Jake wondered what else they would learn about humanity's impact on the galaxy. They had set out to explore strange new worlds and seek out new life and new civilizations. Instead, they had discovered that they were the reason those civilizations were strange, new, and desperately trying to stay hidden from them. The monster they had been looking for among the stars had been with them all along. The Coalition monitoring station was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Built inside a massive asteroid, it was invisible to human sensors, but obviously the work of incredibly advanced technology. As the Meridian docked with the hidden facility, Jake wondered how many similar stations were watching humanity without their knowledge. The archive keeper, who met them, was not what Jake expected. Instead of one being, it was a collective consciousness made up of representatives from dozens of different species. They spoke as one voice through a translation system that was far more sophisticated than anything humans had developed. "Welcome, humans," the archive keeper said. "We are pleased that you finally understand what you are." Dr. Lisa Carter stepped forward. "We know that human expansion has displaced many species. We didn't realize the scope of it until now. Come, we will show you the true scope." They were led through corridors that had been designed to accommodate dozens of different body types and environmental needs. Jake saw aliens that breathed different gases, others that seemed to exist as pure energy, and some that defied any attempt at classification. The main archive chamber was enormous, its walls covered with displays showing the movement of species throughout the galaxy over the past millennium. Jake could see the patterns clearly now. Waves of refugees fleeing ahead of human expansion, entire civilizations abandoning their homeworlds to stay ahead of the spreading influence of Earth. "This is the Great Flight," the archive keeper explained. "The largest migration in galactic history. 247 intelligent species, representing over 6 trillion individual beings, all fleeing from one world." "From Earth," Jake said quietly. "From Earth." The displays showed the current situation in stark detail. Human space formed a growing bubble in one section of the galaxy, while refugee populations clustered in the outer rim territories. The two zones were separated by an ever-shrinking buffer of empty space. "How long before we catch up to you?" Communications Officer Amy Torres asked. "At current expansion rates, approximately 150 years. The galaxy is large, but it is finite. Eventually there will be nowhere left to run." Security Chief Roy Martinez studied the defensive preparations visible in the refugee zones. "You could fight us. Your technology is far superior to ours. Yes, we could destroy every human world in a matter of days, but then what would we have become? We would have committed genocide against an entire species, becoming the very monsters we sought to escape." Dr. Carter was examining the medical data about human biology that the Coalition had compiled. "You've been studying us for centuries. You understand us better than we understand ourselves. We had to. Survival required that we learn everything about humanity, your biology, your psychology, your patterns of expansion and colonization. We needed to predict your movements to stay ahead of you." "What did you learn?" The archive keeper was quiet for a moment. "That you are not evil. You are simply too good at being alive. Your species has evolved to be perfectly adapted for expansion and colonization. You cannot help what you are any more than a star can help burning." Engineer Danny Brooks was studying the technical displays showing human colonial expansion. "The pattern is completely consistent. We always take the best worlds, modify them to suit our needs, and gradually squeeze out any existing life forms. Not through malice," the archive keeper clarified, "through efficiency. Humans are approximately 40% more efficient at resource utilization than the galactic average. When you arrive on a world, you simply use everything better than the previous inhabitants could." Jake felt sick as he understood the implications. "We're not conquering anyone. We're just outcompeting them." "Exactly. It is not war, it is evolution. In action, your species represents a new evolutionary advantage that other forms of life cannot match." They were shown detailed analyses of human psychological patterns. The Coalition had identified the traits that made humanity so successful at expansion, curiosity that drove exploration, Adaptability that allowed survival in any environment, and most importantly, a competitive nature that never allowed them to settle for less than the best available resources. Your species has one additional trait that makes you unique, the archive keeper continued. You do not recognize when you have enough. Other species expand until they reach a comfortable equilibrium with their environment. Humans expand until they control their environment completely. Is that why you never tried to negotiate territorial boundaries? Roy asked. We tried many times. But every negotiation failed because humans do not accept limitations. You agree to boundaries only until you discover something better beyond them. Dr. Carter had been thinking about the long-term implications. What happens when we do reach the outer rim? When there's nowhere left for you to run? That is why we have brought you here. We want to offer humanity a choice. The archive keeper activated a new display showing two possible futures for the galaxy. In the first, human expansion continued unchecked until they controlled every habitable world. The galaxy was rich and prosperous, but entirely human. Every other form of intelligent life had vanished. In the second future, humanity agreed to limit its expansion to specific regions of the galaxy. Other species were given protected zones where they could survive and develop without human interference. The galaxy remained diverse, though humanity controlled a smaller percentage of it. We are offering you a treaty, the archive keeper said. Voluntary limits on human expansion in exchange for technological knowledge that would allow your species to thrive within a smaller territory. What kind of technology? Danny asked. Complete terraforming systems that could make any world perfect for human life. Energy sources that would eliminate resource scarcity. Medical advances that would extend human lifespans indefinitely. Transportation technology that would make travel between your worlds instantaneous. Jake studied the proposed treaty terms. They were incredibly generous. Humanity would be given technology that would solve every material problem they had ever faced. In exchange, they would simply agree not to expand beyond certain boundaries. Why are you offering us this? He asked. You could just wait for us to reach the outer rim and then destroy us. Because we have been watching humanity for 3 centuries, and we know something about your species that you may not realize. What's that? You are not just efficient at expansion and resource utilization. You are also uniquely capable of choice. Most species are driven entirely by biological imperatives. But humans can choose to act against their nature when they understand the consequences of their actions. The archive keeper showed them records of human behavior in crisis situations. Despite their competitive nature, humans had repeatedly chosen cooperation over conquest when they understood the stakes involved. We believe that if humanity truly understands what it means to be the only intelligent species in the galaxy, you will choose to share it with others. Jake looked around at his crew. They had come into space looking for adventure and discovery. Instead, they had learned that their very existence was a threat to every other form of intelligent life in the universe. What if we refuse? Amy asked. What if humanity decides to continue expanding? Then in 150 years, when your expansion reaches the outer rim, we will implement what we call the final protocol, which is complete destruction of all human worlds, followed by our own extinction. We will not allow the galaxy to become a sterile human monoculture, even if preventing it costs us everything. The chamber fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. The coalition was offering humanity a choice: accept limits and share the galaxy or face mutual annihilation. I have to take this back to Earth, Jake said finally. This decision is too big for one ship captain to make. We understand. But we wanted you to know that the choice exists. Your species stands at a crossroads. You can become the gardeners of a diverse galaxy or the inheritors of an empty one. As they prepared to leave the station, Dr. Carter asked, one final question. If we accept this treaty, what happens to the stories about the Devourers? Do other species stop being afraid of us? Fear may take generations to fade, the archive keeper replied. But perhaps your children will grow up in a galaxy where humanity is known not as the Great Hunt, but as the species that chose to share The stars. The journey back to Earth would take months, and Jake knew it would be the most important voyage in human history. They carried with them the knowledge that humanity was not alone in the universe. They were surrounded by intelligent life that had been fleeing from them for centuries. More importantly, they carried an offer that could determine the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. Humanity could choose to remain the monsters that others feared, or they could become something entirely new. The first species in galactic history to voluntarily limit its own expansion for the sake of others. As the Meridian jumped to faster-than-light speed and began the long journey home, Jake stared out at the stars and wondered what choice his species would make. Would humanity choose to be gardeners or conquerors, protectors or predators? For the first time in human history, they had the power to decide what monsters they wanted to be, or if they wanted to be monsters at all.